the Vampire King saw another man's gift on her desk and realized he couldn't lose her forever. The autumn rain drummed against the windows of the university library as Alaric stood frozen in the doorway of Sienna's office. His pale fingers gripped the doorframe, knuckles whitening, an unnecessary habit from his human life centuries ago. The Vampire King's blonde hair, nearly silver in the dim lamplight, fell across his forehead as he stared at the single red rose lying across her desk. Not just any rose, a fresh one, dewdrops still clinging to its petals, wrapped in cream-coloured paper with a small card tucked beneath the green ribbon. Alaric's jaw tightened. In his other hand he held his own gift, a first edition of Sienna's favourite book of poetry, one he'd spent 3 months tracking down across 2 continents. It suddenly felt foolish, inadequate. He shouldn't have come unannounced. He shouldn't have used the spare key she'd given him months ago, back when things between them were different, back when she still looked at him like he hung the moon and stars, instead of with that cautious distance that had grown between them these past weeks. The rose mocked him with its simplicity, its perfection. Alaric moved with inhuman silence across the small office, his expensive Italian shoes making no sound on the worn carpet. He stopped before her desk, his ancient golden eyes, the only feature that betrayed his true nature, fixed on the small card. Every instinct screamed at him to read it, but he resisted. Barely. He had no right, not anymore, not after what he'd done. The memory of their last real conversation stabbed through him like a wooden stake. 2 weeks ago, in his penthouse apartment, when she'd finally gathered the courage to say the words that had been building between them like a storm. "I can't do this anymore, Alaric. I can't be your secret. I can't be the human you visit in the dark and pretend doesn't exist in the daylight." He'd been preparing for a council meeting, one of the endless political machinations required to maintain peace among the vampire covens of North America. He'd barely looked up from the documents he'd been reviewing. "You know why it has to be this way, Sienna. The council would never accept a human in my life. It's too dangerous for you, for both of us." "Then what are we doing? What am I to you?" That's when he'd made his mistake, the mistake that had been eating at him every night since. You're important to me, but I have responsibilities, a kingdom to run, enemies who would use any weakness against me." She'd flinched at the word weakness, and he'd known immediately he'd said the wrong thing, but pride, his ancient, stupid pride, had kept him from taking it back. She'd left that night without another word, and he'd let her go, telling himself it was for the best, that she deserved a normal life, a normal man who could give her daylight and simplicity, and a future that didn't include immortal politics and blood. But the reality of losing her had hit him harder than he'd anticipated. The silence of his too large penthouse had become unbearable. The taste of blood, even the finest vintages, ethically sourced, had turned to ash in his mouth. Colours seemed duller. Music had lost its appeal. Even the thrill of power of command felt hollow. He'd existed for over 500 years. He'd loved before, or thought he had. Brief flames that had burned bright and faded into memory. But Sienna was different. She'd worked her way into his dead heart so gradually he hadn't noticed until she was essential, like blood itself. And now someone else was giving her roses. The door opened behind him. Alaric didn't need to turn to know it was her. He'd recognize her heartbeat anywhere, that steady rhythm that had become his favourite sound in all the world. "Alaric," Sienna's voice was surprised, guarded. "What are you doing here?" He turned slowly, drinking in the sight of her. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore those ridiculous oversized glasses she put on when she'd been grading papers for too long. A coffee stain marked the sleeve of her cardigan. She was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. "I used the key," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "I apologize, I should have called." Her brown eyes flicked to the book in his hand, then to the rose on her desk, and something complicated crossed her face. Did you need something?" Everything, he needed everything. Her laugh, her warmth, the way she challenged him, the way she made 500 years of existence suddenly feel insufficient, because he wanted 500 more just to spend them with her. But what he said was, "I found the book, the one you mentioned, the 1847 edition of Tennyson. I thought you might want it for your collection." Oh, she stepped further into the office, setting down her own stack of papers. She didn't move toward him or the book. That's very thoughtful. You shouldn't have gone to the trouble. It was no trouble. Silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. Once there had been no such thing as awkward silence between them. They'd talked for hours about everything and nothing. Literature, history, philosophy, her students, his carefully edited stories of the past. She'd made him laugh, something he'd almost forgotten how to do. The rose, he said, unable to help himself. Are you seeing someone? Her chin lifted slightly, a flash of defiance in her eyes that he both loved and dreaded. Would it matter if I were? Yes, it would matter more than the sun rising, more than his next breath, if he actually needed to breathe. It would matter more than his crown, his kingdom, his immortal life. Of course it would matter, he said softly. Why? The question was sharp, edged with old hurt. I'm just a weakness, remember, a liability to the great vampire king. I never said. You did, maybe not in those exact words, but that's what you meant. She crossed her arms, and he saw her fingers tremble slightly before she hid them. I asked you what I was to you, Alaric, and you made it very clear that I was a complication you could live without. I was wrong. The words burst from him with a force that surprised them both. I was so utterly, completely wrong. She stared at him, those brown eyes wide with shock. I thought I was protecting you, he continued, taking a step toward her. I thought if I kept you at a distance, if I didn't let the council know how much you mean to me, you'd be safe. But all I did was hurt you, and lose you, and I can't. His voice cracked, centuries of control slipping. I can't bear it, Sienna. These 2 weeks without you have been torment. Alaric, her voice was softer now, confused. I love you, 3 words he'd been too afraid to say, too arrogant to admit he felt. I love you, and I've been a fool, and I know I have no right to ask you for anything after how I treated you. But please, tell me I'm not too late. Tell me that Rose is from a student or a colleague or anyone who doesn't mean to you what I hope I still mean to you. Her hand rose to her throat, a gesture he recognized. She did it when she was overwhelmed. You love me. With everything I am, everything I have been and ever will be. A knock on the door shattered the moment. They both turned as a man appeared in the doorway, tall, handsome in a wholesome way that made Alaric's predatory instincts flare. He had dark hair, kind eyes, and a smile that faltered when he saw Alaric. Oh, Sienna, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had a meeting. I just wanted to see if you got my... His eyes landed on the rose. Ah, you did, good. Alaric felt something cold and dangerous unfurl in his chest. This was him, the rose giver. Sienna glanced between them, looking almost panicked. Marcus, this is Alaric. Alaric, this is Dr. Marcus Chen. He just joined the history department. Marcus extended a hand, his smile friendly and open. Everything Alaric could never be in the daylight world. Pleasure to meet you. Any friend of Sienna's is a friend of mine. Alaric stared at the offered hand for a moment too long before taking it, careful to control his strength. Marcus's palm was warm, alive, human. Everything Alaric was not. Likewise, Alaric managed, the word tasting like a lie. Marcus seemed oblivious to the tension crackling through the small office. Sienna's been a lifesaver, helping me get oriented around campus. I wanted to thank her for all her help, and I remembered she mentioned she liked roses, so... He gestured to the flower with an almost boyish enthusiasm that made Alaric want to throw him through the wall. That's very thoughtful, Alaric said, his tone carefully neutral even as his mind raced with dark, possessive thoughts that would have horrified Sienna if she could hear them. I should let you two get back to your meeting, Marcus said, already backing toward the door. Sienna, we're still on for coffee tomorrow to discuss the joint symposium idea. Alaric's eyes snapped to Sienna's face. She looked uncomfortable, a flush creeping up her neck. Yes, of course, I'll see you then, Marcus. Great, nice meeting you, Alaric. With a final wave, Marcus disappeared down the hallway, his footsteps echoing on the old floors. The moment he was gone, the silence returned, heavier than before. A symposium, Alaric said flatly. Yes, a joint symposium between our departments. It's a professional. Is he courting you? The old-fashioned word slipped out, revealing his age and his agitation. Sienna's eyes flashed. Even if he is, it's none of your business. You made sure of that when you pushed me away. I explained. You explained that you love me, finally. After weeks of silence, you show up in my office uninvited and drop that bomb like it fixes everything. She moved behind her desk, putting furniture between them like a barrier. Do you have any idea what these past 2 weeks have been like for me? Crying myself to sleep, questioning everything, wondering if I was ever anything more to you than a diversion. The pain in her voice cut deeper than any blade. Alaric had faced down enemies, survived wars, endured torture, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of tears gathering in Sienna's eyes. You were never a diversion, he said hoarsely. From the moment I met you. In this very library, she interrupted, a bitter smile on her lips. 9 months ago, you were researching something in the archives, some medieval manuscript. I thought you were a graduate student. He remembered. God, he remembered every detail. She'd been helping him find a reference and they'd started talking about the Crusades. She'd had theories, insights that had surprised him, some of them hitting closer to the truth than she could have known, since he'd actually been there. Her passion for history, her quick mind, her laugh when he'd made a dry observation about historical revisionism. He'd been captivated immediately. I should have told you what I was from the beginning, he admitted. Maybe, but I understand why you didn't. What I don't understand is why you pursued me at all if you knew it could never work. Why did you take me to all those beautiful places? Why did you share your stories, your world with me? Why did you? Her voice broke. Why did you make me fall in love with you if you were always planning to keep me at arm's length? I didn't plan it. Alaric ran a hand through his blonde hair, frustration and self-loathing warring in his chest. I didn't plan any of this. I thought I could control it. I thought I could keep you separate from the rest of my life, keep you safe and still have you in my world. But you're right, it was selfish, impossibly selfish. So what's changed? She swiped at her eyes angrily. You say you love me, but what does that mean? Are you ready to actually let me into your life, all of it? Or will I still be your secret, the human you're ashamed to claim in front of your people? I have never been ashamed of you. Then what, are you afraid? The great vampire king afraid of what some council thinks? Her words strung because they were true. He was afraid not for himself but for her. The vampire world was brutal, political and dangerous. His enemies would see her as a weakness to exploit, a vulnerability to attack. Human consorts rarely ended well in their world. They aged while their lovers remained frozen in time, or they were turned unwillingly, or worse, they were used as pawns in power plays that destroyed them. But looking at her now, seeing the pain he'd caused by trying to protect her, he realized he'd been protecting himself too. From the inevitable heartbreak, from watching her grow old and die, from the terrifying depth of his own feelings. Yes, he said quietly. I'm afraid that my world will destroy you, that my enemies will hurt you to hurt me, that you'll come to hate what I am, what I've done, the darkness that comes with my existence. I'm afraid that I'm too damaged, too old, too set in my ways to be what you need. Sienna's expression softened slightly. Finally, an honest answer. But I'm more afraid of losing you. He moved closer to the desk, his golden eyes holding hers. When I saw that rose, when I thought of you with someone else, someone who could give you everything I can't, daylight, normalcy, a simple life, I realized that I've already lost. Because even if you choose him, even if you move on, I'm yours completely, eternally. There won't be anyone else for me, not in 100 years, not in 1,000. She was quiet for a long moment, searching his face. What are you saying? I'm saying I'll do whatever it takes. If you'll have me, if you'll give me another chance, I'll stop hiding you. I'll tell the council. I'll deal with the consequences. I'll find a way to keep you safe without keeping you secret. He placed the book gently on her desk. Or if you'd rather be with Marcus, with someone who can give you an easier life, I'll step aside. I'll leave you alone. Whatever you need to be happy, even if it destroys me. You'd really do that, defy your council for me. I'd burn my kingdom to the ground for you. She drew in a sharp breath. That's quite a declaration. It's the truth. Sienna picked up the rose, twirling it between her fingers. Marcus is nice. He's kind, smart, and he's interested in me. He makes me laugh. Each word was a knife to Alaric's heart, but he stood still, accepting the pain as his due. But he's not you, she continued softly. He doesn't challenge me the way you do. He doesn't see me the way you do. When he looks at me, he sees a colleague, maybe a potential girlfriend. When you look at me, I feel seen, truly seen, all of me, my strengths, my flaws, my dreams, my fears. Hope, fragile and terrifying, flickered in Alaric's chest. That doesn't mean I'm ready to just forget the past 2 weeks, she added, her voice firming. You hurt me, Alaric. You made me feel disposable, like I was convenient when it suited you and dismissible when I became complicated. I know, and I will spend however long it takes making that up to you if you'll let me. And this council, you're really ready to face them? He nodded. I'm meeting with them tomorrow night. I was already planning to announce my intention to take a human consort. They won't like it. There will be opposition, but I am still king. My word is law. A consort, she repeated. Is that like a girlfriend, a fiancée? It's a formal recognition of our bond. Under vampire law, a consort is under the king's protection. Harming you would be an act of treason. It would also signal my intention to potentially turn you someday if that's something you wanted. Though there's no pressure, he added quickly. That decision would be entirely yours and not for years if ever. Sienna set down the rose and moved around the desk. She stopped just in front of him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, hear her heart beating. You were really planning to do this before you saw the rose? I have the speech written. I've been rehearsing it for 3 days. A smile tugged at her lips, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her in too long. You rehearsed? Extensively. I even consulted with Victor, my second in command. He thought I was having a mental breakdown when I asked him for advice on grand romantic gestures. She laughed, the sound loosening the vice around his chest. I would have paid to see that conversation. He told me I was being an idiot and should have claimed you publicly months ago. Then he threatened to court you himself if I didn't fix things. Victor's the scary one with the Russian accent. That's him, though he's significantly less scary when he's lecturing me about my relationship failures. Sienna reached up, her hand hovering near his face before finally touching his cheek. Her fingers were warm against his cool skin. You really love me. More than I knew I could love anything. And you're sure, because I can't go through this again, Alaric. I can't be pushed away again. I'm sure. I have never been more certain of anything in 500 years. He covered her hand with his own. I love you, Sienna, not despite the complications but including them, all of you forever if you'll have me. She stood on her toes and kissed him, and for the first time in 2 weeks the world felt right again. Her lips were soft, familiar, perfect. He pulled her closer, careful of his strength, pouring everything he felt into the kiss, apology, promise, devotion. When they finally broke apart, she was smiling. I love you too, you dramatic, overcomplicated vampire. Does that mean? It means we try again, properly this time, no more hiding, no more secrets. Relief flooded through him so intensely he actually felt dizzy. Thank you, I swear you won't regret this. I better not, she poked his chest, and you're taking me to this council meeting. He froze. Sienna, that's not necessary, it could be dangerous. Nope, no more of that. If I'm going to be your consort, I should meet the people you rule. Besides, I'm not letting you face them alone. They can be intense. I teach freshman seminars. I can handle intense. Despite his concerns, warmth spread through him. This was why he loved her, her courage, her refusal to be protected to the point of being sidelined. Very well, but you stay close to me the entire time. Deal, she glanced at the clock on her wall. It's almost midnight, don't you have king things to do? Nothing more important than this. Flatterer, but she was smiling. She picked up the Tennyson volume, examining it with reverent fingers. This really is a beautiful edition, thank you. My pleasure, he paused. What will you do about Marcus? I'll thank him for the rose and gently make it clear I'm not interested. He's a good guy, he'll understand. Alaric tried to feel magnanimous about Marcus and almost succeeded. And the coffee meeting is about a professional symposium and nothing else, but if it makes you feel better, you can pick me up afterward. In broad daylight. She raised an eyebrow. I thought you had that spelled ring that lets you handle limited sun exposure. I do, but... Then yes, in broad daylight. Let the whole campus see, no more shadows, remember. He smiled, genuine and wide. No more shadows. The council chamber was exactly as imposing as Alaric had warned. Sienna stood close to him in the vast underground room, trying not to gawk at the vaulted ceilings, the ancient tapestries, or the 12 vampires seated in a semicircle before them. They were all beautiful in that uncanny way vampires were, too perfect, too still, their eyes carrying the weight of centuries. Victor was there, his scarred face impassive, though he'd given Sienna a small nod when they entered. The others regarded her with everything from curiosity to barely concealed disdain. "You've called this emergency session to introduce us to a human." The speaker was a woman with sharp features and copper hair, her voice dripping with contempt. "This is beneath you, Alaric." "Lady Morgesser, I'd remind you to watch your tone." Alaric's voice was calm but carried an unmistakable edge of command. His hand rested lightly on the small of Sienna's back, a gesture of support and possession. "I've called you here to announce my intention to take Sienna Reeves as my formal consort." The room erupted in voices. Sienna held her ground, chin up, even as her heart hammered. "This is madness. A human consort, you'll make us a laughing stock. What about the bloodline traditions?" Alaric waited, letting them tire themselves out. When he spoke again, his voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "I am your king, the first vampire king to successfully unite the North American covens in 200 years. Under my rule, we've tripled our territory, negotiated peace with the werewolf clans, and established profitable, legitimate businesses that keep us out of the human authorities' notice. My judgment has proven sound. I expect it to be trusted now." "But a human," another council member started. "Is the woman I love," Alaric interrupted. "The woman I choose. You will respect her as you respect me, or you will face the consequences of that disrespect." Sienna felt her eyes sting. Even knowing he'd planned to do this, hearing him defend her so absolutely in front of his people meant everything. Morgesser stood, her movements serpentine and graceful. "Love, how quaint, and when she ages, when she withers and dies in a handful of decades, what then?" "That's my concern, not yours." "It becomes our concern when your grief makes you unstable. We've all seen what vampires become when they lose their human lovers. The madness, the vengeance, the chaos." "Then perhaps," Sienna said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice, "you should hope he treats me well enough that I'd consider turning someday." The room went silent. Morgesser's eyes widened slightly. "You'd consider the change?" Victor asked, genuine interest in his tone. "Someday, maybe, if Alaric and I are still together and it feels right." She looked up at Alaric. "We haven't really discussed the specifics, but I'm not ruling it out." She wasn't, she'd realized. The idea of eternity had terrified her at first, but the idea of eternity with Alaric, of seeing all the centuries he'd seen, learning everything he could teach her, standing by his side through whatever came, that was less terrifying and more exhilarating. Alaric's expression was carefully controlled, but she felt his hand tighten slightly on her back. They'd have to talk about this properly later. "Even if she turns eventually, what about now?" another council member asked, a man with dark skin and kind eyes who'd been introduced as Elder Thomas. "She's vulnerable, a target. Every enemy you have, Alaric, and you have many, will see her as an easy way to hurt you. Which is why I'm declaring her under royal protection. Any threat to her is a threat to the crown. I'll also be assigning her a personal guard when I can't be with her." "I don't need a babysitter," Sienna muttered. "You need to stay alive," Alaric countered. "Please let me do this." She sighed. "Fine, but they have to be discreet. I have a job and a life." "Victor's daughter, Katia, is excellent at discreet protection. She can pose as a student." Victor nodded. "Katia would be honored." "This is highly irregular," Morgesser insisted, though her voice had lost some of its bite. "The other regions will talk. They'll see it as weakness." "Let them talk." Alaric surveyed the council with his golden eyes. "I've been alive for 5 centuries. I've won wars, built empires, and ruled with absolute authority. But I've never had what I have with Sienna. She makes me better, more human in the ways that matter, more connected to the world we're trying to exist in. If that's weakness, then I'll be weak. But I suspect it's actually the greatest strength I've ever found." Elder Thomas smiled faintly. "Young love, I remember it." He looked at Sienna. "Do you understand what you're agreeing to, child? The vampire world is not kind, our politics are brutal. You'll be scrutinized, tested, possibly threatened. I teach at a university, Sienna said. I already deal with brutal politics and constant scrutiny. At least with vampires, the backstabbing is more literal and honest. A few council members actually laughed. Victor's smile was approving. She has spine, he said. I like her. Your approval is noted, Alaric said dryly. Is there anyone who actually wishes to formally object to my decision? Morgessa looked like she wanted to, but after a long moment she shook her head and sat down. I object to the principle, but you are king. I'll abide by your choice. As will we all, Elder Thomas said. The others murmured agreement, some more reluctant than others. Then it's settled. Sienna Reeves is under my protection and recognized as my consort. Spread the word through all the covens. Make sure everyone understands the consequences of threatening her. Alaric's voice dropped to something dangerous. I will not be merciful to anyone who ignores this decree. The meeting concluded shortly after, with various council members approaching to introduce themselves properly to Sienna. Some were genuine in their welcome, others simply going through the motions. By the time they finally left the chamber, Sienna felt exhausted. You did beautifully, Alaric said as they walked through the underground corridors toward the exit. I'm so proud of you. I was terrified. You hid it well. He pulled her into a quiet alcove and kissed her forehead. Thank you for standing with me. Always, she wrapped her arms around him. Did you mean it, about me making you better? Every word. You've given me something I thought I'd lost centuries ago, hope, a reason to care about the future instead of just managing the present. That's beautiful and sad at the same time. That's immortality, he stroked her hair, but you make it feel less lonely. They stood there for a moment, just holding each other. So, Sienna said eventually, about the turning thing, I probably shouldn't have brought that up without discussing it with you first. No, I'm glad you did. Is it really something you'd consider? Maybe, I don't know, I'm 28, I'm not ready to make that decision now. But the idea of growing old while you stay frozen, I don't love that either. Can we just table it, revisit it in a few years? Of course, there's no pressure, Sienna, I mean it. If you choose to remain human your whole life, I'll cherish every moment we have. And if you choose to turn someday, I'll be there to guide you through it. What would you prefer? He considered carefully. Selfishly, I'd love to have you with me forever, but I also know the cost of this existence. I'd never push you toward it. It has to be your choice made freely when and if you're ready. She kissed him. How did I get so lucky to find you? I believe I wandered into a library, looking for a manuscript about the Third Crusade. Which you'd actually participated in. Minor details. She laughed. My boyfriend is a 500-year-old vampire king. My life is so weird now. Consort, he corrected with a smile. Boyfriend is so informal. Fine, my consort is a 500-year-old vampire king who once fought in the Crusades and now has to deal with vampire council meetings. Better. Much. They emerged from the underground into the night air. Alaric's penthouse was nearby, and Sienna had already decided she was spending the night. They had a lot of lost time to make up for. Can I ask you something? She said as they walked hand in hand. Anything. When you saw Marcus's rose on my desk, what did you think? Alaric was quiet for a moment. I thought I'd waited too long, that I'd pushed you away so effectively that you'd already found someone else, someone better suited to you. And how did that make you feel? Like I was dying, which is ironic considering I'm already dead. He squeezed her hand. It was the wake-up call I needed, the moment I realized I couldn't hide behind excuses anymore. I had to fight for you or lose you forever. I wouldn't have actually dated Marcus, you know, even if you hadn't come back. No, because even angry at you, even hurt, I was still completely in love with you. I just needed you to show me that you felt the same, that I wasn't alone in this. You were never alone in this. I was just too afraid and too proud to admit it properly. They reached his building, and the doorman nodded respectfully at them both. In the elevator, Sienna leaned against Alaric's chest, listening to the silence where his heartbeat should be. I love you, she said softly. I love you too, more than words can express. The elevator doors opened to his penthouse. Their penthouse now, she supposed. They'd have to discuss logistics. She still had her apartment, her job, her normal life to maintain. But they'd figure it out. Together. As they stepped inside, Sienna felt something settle in her chest. Peace, certainty, this was right. He was right, they were right. Stay with me, Alaric said, though it wasn't really a question. Tonight, tomorrow, forever if you'll have me. She smiled, pulling him close. Forever sounds good. Let's start with tonight and work our way up. He kissed her then, deeply, thoroughly, and Sienna melted into it. Outside, the city sparkled with lights, unaware that in this moment a vampire king had found something more precious than his crown, his power, or his immortality. He'd found home, and he was never letting it go. 6 months later, Sienna adjusted her dress nervously. The formal vampire ball was in full swing around her, the first major event where she was appearing publicly as Alaric's consort. Stop fidgeting, Alaric murmured in her ear. You look stunning. Everyone's staring. Because you're beautiful, and because you're with me, they'll get used to it. She smiled up at him. His blonde hair was styled perfectly, his formal attire making him look every inch the king he was. But his eyes, those golden eyes, were soft when they looked at her. Dance with me, he said, offering his hand. She took it, letting him lead her onto the floor. As they moved together, she caught sight of Victor giving her an approving nod, Elder Thomas raising his glass in salute. Even Morgessa looked slightly less disapproving than usual. See, Alaric said, you've won them over. Some of them, maybe. The ones who matter. He spun her and she laughed. Are you happy? Incredibly, you. More than I've ever been. As the music swelled and they moved together, Sienna realized she'd never imagined this life for herself, but she couldn't imagine any other life now, not without him. I love you, Alaric. And I love you, Sienna, for now and forever. Forever, the word didn't scare her anymore. Instead, it filled her with anticipation. Whatever came next, whether she chose to turn someday or live out her human years with him, they'd face it together. And that was all she needed. Want more stories of supernatural romance and unlikely love? Join my Patreon. The link is in the description below. Exclusive and uncensored episodes are available only on Patreon. Check the link in the description.